Hello, welcome to Upskill Your Parenting. In this parent video series, we are going to be talking about school readiness. And this particular video is on language development. Just so you know, the information that is presented in this video came from a couple different websites where I collected some of the information and just kind of summarized those into this video, along with the reference to gold objectives for development and learning. Let's talk a little bit about language development, what it is and how does it help us. So there's two main categories of language development. The first one is receptive language, and that is how we understand what we are hearing and listening to. The next one is expressive language, and that is the use of language. So two different terms, how we hear it and understand it, receptive, and expressive is how we use it. Some of the things that you're going to be seeing in language development as a child gets ready for going into school, kindergarten, is that they are going to be able to be having more conversations and using longer sentences. That's where we want to be starting to see them growing out of that toddler, especially into that preschool, older preschool age range. It helps to express what they are thinking, to them telling us stories, describing about their feelings and experiences. So lots of connections with different things as they learn, even within the social emotional development, so they can express their feelings. Adults at this age, as they go into kindergarten again, should be able to understand most of what a child is saying. So bringing this up is going to get you thinking about, can most people, not just me, because I have lived with this child and I start to learn their substitutions of sounds, things like that, but as they meet people, and newer people in their life, or maybe someone that they don't see as often, do those people understand most what they're saying? If they don't, and if you find other people oftentimes have a hard time understanding your child, that might be a sign to either bring it up to your pediatrician or make a referral to local school district, talk to your child care teachers here at Cultivate. They are all aware of how to go about talking about concerns and who to go to, and we have lots of support for that. So that's kind of a general guideline I always tell parents as when to kind of know when to. You also see a lot of frustration in the child in trying to communicate, and you see them getting more frustrated with that. Also, another key point to bring out with language development is they understand many more words than what they use. So you often see this very easily through that infant toddler age, where as you're talking, they're starting to understand you, or they'll look at you, or they give you a reaction. So even though they're not talking at that stage, you get reactions out of them. So that means their receptive language develops faster than their expressive language. So let's get a little bit more in depth with some of the specific language skills that we are talking about to kind of get you a little bit more in depth and a little bit more knowledge about those. So the ones on the left side are going to be the main ones, three categories. So listens to and understands increasingly complex language. The next one is uses language to express thoughts and needs, and uses appropriate conversational and other communication skills. So to get a little bit more in depth with each one of those and to give you some examples of them, the first one is comprehends language. So what we mean by this is that they respond appropriately to you. So as you're talking about things and bringing up a topic, they're not responding with something completely different. You want to make sure that they're staying on topic. So can your child stay on topic? Or every time you bring something up and ask a question, do they really go off somewhere else with it and not very often give you a response that is on topic? Follows directions. What we're looking for at the age of, and developmentally going into kindergarten, we want them to be able to follow for sure two, if not 3-step directions. So again, this is just something to be aware of as a parent and as you're functioning throughout the day. How many directions do you give your child, and do they follow through with them? So thinking about, can you please go get your shoes on and then grab your bag? Can they easily do that those things? Or could you please go brush your teeth, get your pajamas on, and wait for me in your room? Things like that. So those are the things to be paying attention to, and if they can follow those directions. This one is tough because we don't often think about it at home, and we just kind of keep pushing through and we help the child. But once they enter into a classroom with 20+ children, this is really an important one to have, so they do feel successful in being able to go in, hear those directions, and be able to follow through with them. Uses an expanding expressive vocabulary is the next one. So with this, what you're going to be, what we mean by this is that you're going to be hearing your child use more words, especially unfamiliar words or words that are a little bit more technical, or maybe ones that you don't really use very often, but maybe they're catching it from school or from a friend's house that they play at a lot, or cousins, things like that. The next one is use conventional grammar. What we're looking for in here at this developmental stage going into kindergarten is we want them to be using 4 to 6 word sentences. So again, just listening to a child and listening to a sentence they said in quick, counting how many letter or words were in that sentence and seeing where they're at with it. Tells about another time or place. What we're looking for with this one is kids are great at storytelling, absolutely. What we want to look for is, do they stay on topic, or do they give detail, or do they put it in order? When they're saying about another time or place, are they able to tell you about their day at preschool or their overnight at grandma's or something that happened in the past? Are they able to go, instead of just right here in the now and what's happening, are they able to talk about other places or other times? Engages in conversation. This one, what we're looking at is the number of exchanges that go on between a child and someone else. So if this one, if you're paying attention to, great times in the car as you guys are having conversation and seeing how often the exchange goes back and forth. And then we're looking for 3 to 5 exchanges. So if you were to ask your child, how was your day? And they were to tell you, good, we painted. If you were to say, oh, really, what did you paint? And they can answer it, there's 3 exchanges. There might even be a couple more in there if you get in depth, but that is how it stays on topic. So it's not just how was your day, good, and then they go off on something else that they just saw, and then you commented on that. That's not the same topic that you guys started. You want to stay on topic and keep going with that. And that's usually a tough one within this category, or the skill that I have noticed over the years is the staying on topic. Can be a tough one. So a tip I give a lot of parents is that if you are talking about something and ask a question, and let's say you ask them about what they had for lunch at school, and their answer is, oh, did you know that? And they start talking about something else. Don't even go on to that, even though it maybe sounds really amusing and you want to hear about it. Go back to, oh, before we talk about that, could you tell me what you had for lunch? Because I had asked you that question. So just be more aware of, are you requiring your child to respond to the question that you asked, and then being able to go on to the next topic. And the last one is uses social rules of language. So here what we're looking for is the volume of their voice, and can they regulate it? And can they acknowledge when you say shh or quieter voice? Can they quiet their voice down? Or when we're in a certain spot where it is a requirement to say a little bit quieter, can they do that? Versus when they're outside and their voice can be louder. We also want to look at, within the social rules, is taking turns. And again, just practicing that back and forth. And if you are telling the child something and all of a sudden they start talking up and interrupt, just politely stopping them and saying, oh, just wait, let me finish what I was saying first, and then you can go. So it's just, again, a lot of that is the awareness and being cognizant of, are you making sure that your child is taking turns and practicing that with you? So here are some other ideas of what you can do. Pay attention to how you give directions. Again, where we talked about the steps and making sure that they're not too many steps. Are they very clear directions? And is it stating what you want the child to do? Have conversations and practice conversational skills. Like we talked about, that turn taking, the volume, manners, things like that. Or if you feel like my child does really well with me because they're comfortable with me, paying attention to that when they're around other children and play dates and things like that, and practicing it. Explaining the why behind things is really going to help them become more curious, increase that language and the vocabulary that they have. Again, the same way to increase that language or the vocabulary is teaching them new words. When you say a word that you're pretty sure they don't know, talk about that word. Or if they're listening to the radio and hear a word, telling them about, do you know what that word means? And explaining it more. saying exactly what you mean, kind of like what we talked about in the direction part. The kids are very literal. So just be aware of if you find that your child is really having a hard time with your directions, or you feel like when you give directions and it's not really being done correctly or right or at all. It's just when you talk about language, that's one of the things that you could look at. There may be more of a behavioral piece to it, but language sometimes will play a part as well. So it's something to think about. And as we talked about one of the first slides, what you can do is seek language and speech support if needed. Catching them when they're young with those speech issues and some of the vocabulary or the way they're pronouncing words and sounds is really important to start that early and getting them the help with that to correct it. Some more specific ideas. If a child is having a hard time with pronouncing sounds and words, sometimes, so for this one, a lot of parents will come to me, what do I do if my child is not pronouncing the word right? Again, as we're getting into school readiness, going to kindergarten, most of their sounds and words should be in place. There can be some still that are developing, but if depending on how many sounds and words you're looking at that they're not pronouncing, that definitely would be a time to talk to a pediatrician or a teacher, help me grow referral, something like that. But if your child is having a hard time with certain words, say the word back to them the correct way. Oh, so you like playing with that truck out in the rain or whatever it may be. You don't need to force them to say it again. So you don't need to go to the child and say truck. And then let's say they say it again in this exact same way, which was wrong the first time. No, truck. And then you just keep going with that. Most of the time, that's what that's going to do is just frustrate the child and make them really self-conscious about their words. So just repeating it the right way. Often what I find, and I have done this before too, is children, as they're in the toddler stage, growing in the preschool age, they sometimes will take the way they say words and keep saying that word that way because we think it's really, really cute when they say that. But what happens is because we start using the word, saying the word that way as well, they think that's how it is instead of us saying it the correct way. So again, something to think about if you're still some of those words that you're even saying the wrong way because it was really cute when they're a toddler and things like that, it might just be time to tell yourself we're going to start saying it the right way around them so they learn that. So just being that good speech model is really important. Tough conversations or tough topics can be hard, so keeping them age appropriate. Again, that language is really important, that they're understanding the language and that you're not using words that are too big for them to understand or too hard, technical. The meaning behind them is a little bit deeper than the children can understand. So just be aware of using appropriate language. One of the things that is really important in language development is listening and showing your child that you are listening. So really being an active listener. So there's just some tips here that I put down, making sure you give your child full attention, eye contact at eye level, watch for the body language of your child. You can learn a lot from them, but sometimes we're so busy and listening, but not really watching, and we're not catching a lot of those body language cues. Summarize back what your child said. So as they tell you that and you listen to them, in return, say, okay, so what I heard you say is, and then repeat it back. To keep them engaged and to show your interest, use phrases like really, okay, go on, oh, really, then what happened? Nod, smile, and be affectionate as you're listening. And then listen until the child finishes story. Now, this one can be tricky because I'm sure some of you are thinking my child would talk on and on if I let him. For the most part, if you can just give them some times here and there where they just get to tell their story and they can just go on as long as they want, that would be the opportunity to tell them, okay, you can tell as long a story as you want. Or sometimes you might have to say, oh, we only have time for a short story, but giving them the opportunity to also go into those long stories as well. And then just remembering reading to your child and talking to them really is the best way to grow that language development. Thank you for listening to our upskill video on language development for school readiness.